So, if you've seen my previous videos, you know that I've been talking about and praising Deadlock a lot as of late. However, a comment that I get often on those videos is that instead of comparing Deadlock to other MOBAs made by other companies like League of Legends or Heroes of the Storm and whatnot, that I really should be comparing it to Dota 2, seeing as that's the other MOBA that Valve themselves have actually made. So the reason to compare it to Deadlock is pretty self-explanatory, but here's the thing. The reason why I haven't really thought to bring up Dota at all in any of my prior videos is because I've never played it before. The only reason why my account even has Dota 2 playtime on it at all is because back in 2015 my account got hacked and whoever stole it used the 2 weeks that it took Valve to get my account back to do nothing but play Dota 2 seemingly non-stop. But regardless, this does at least make me uniquely qualified to judge Dota 2's new player experience from the perspective of an actual brand new player that has never touched this game before. After all, this is one of the biggest things that I praise Deadlock for, because I've never really been able to get into MOBAs at all before I played Deadlock, which managed to appeal to me in a way that no other MOBA has in the past. So at least, according to the comments, a lot of what makes Deadlock so good and has such a broad appeal supposedly originated back in Dota, which again makes sense given that they're made by the same company and allegedly even have the same lead developer, although of course they tend to keep their identity private. But the fact that the lead developer for both Dota and Deadlock both happen to be lead developers for a MOBA that want to keep their identity private, it feels unlikely that there's two of those people at the company when there's probably just one. But regardless, I figured that we can finally sit down together and see what happens when I finally crack open Dota 2, and see if it lives up to what people in the comments have been saying. I mean, hey, for all I know, maybe I'll even like it more than Deadlock. I mean, I doubt it, but I can't know until I try. And also, before we get started, I do just want to preface this by saying that if this doesn't end up going well and I end up not enjoying my time with it, that doesn't mean that Dota is inherently a bad game or anything like that. I'm just doing a first impression of a game that I know could obviously take hundreds of hours to fully understand. I'm mostly just curious to see what some of the basic mechanics and design ideas they want with Dota are, and to see how that compares to their later work with Deadlock. So, without any further ado, let's dive right in. Okay, we've got some kind of intro animation. This looks awesome. Now, to be fair, like I said, my account actually was hacked, and the hacker did play Dota with the time that they had access to my account, so I don't know if the game is going to, like, give me the actual, like, first-time player experience. Oh my god. Okay, this is a lot. Let me just... Oh. Okay, this... So, one of the things I do like about Deadlock is the fact that... The fact that they start you out in the hideout as a small space that you can roam around, it does make the first impression of the game a little bit more digestible, I think, instead of having these big, complicated menus everywhere. Like, okay, so what are we even looking at here? We've got me and my friends, so no, I guess that's for matchmaking, that makes sense. Your first curio is available. Click to claim your complimentary item. Okay, I guess it's like a skin.
Hello? Are you a friend of my brother's? Or are you breaking into his safe house? Or are you a friend of my brother's and you're breaking into his safe house? I suppose it doesn't matter. That army you're stealing is called the Lotus Calyx, by the way. And I'll admit, it looks like it was made for you.
Okay.
Knowing my brother, there's a good chance you're stealing it back from him. Oh, in
I-
any case, keep it. Have you seen my brother, by the way?
I,
He told me
I,
to meet him here and his letter made it sound urgent.
I don't
Which
know
means
who he
someone's
is.
trying to kill him again.
I don't know who you
Sister,
are.
Quintessa, you're not.
Oh.
Oh, hello, hero. That armor looks really terrific on you. Quintessa, you're not going to believe this.
Um,
Someone is trying to kill me.
Look, I clicked on a button. Jesus Christ. Okay. I guess I have that now. Okay, it was, don't imagine what game it's also your home button. Okay, surely this is giving me first time. Okay, yeah. Okay, here we go. We got the learn button is recommended. Definitely going to go there. Collector's cache. Okay, this is just patch notes. Okay, good. Got the play button down here. Notifications, which again is mostly updates. Now in your armory. Okay. Guessing this is your, yeah, your currency. Got it. Okay. That was a lot. But let's just try to move past it, and let's go on to the tutorial, I think. Okay. Tier 1. So you want to be a hero. 5 heroes, a map on a dream. Let's start with the basics. Crash course on core mechanics and the general concepts of the game. Okay. I doubt I'm going to play through the whole tutorial on camera, but we'll see just how far I can get and how long these takes. Thankfully, they have time. Actually, I do actually like that they list how long each tutorial is. You know, 2 minutes, 10 minutes, 3 minutes. Play a game, new player mode, 30 minutes. Okay. Team fight initiation, stuns and disables, status effects, last hitting. Wow, it takes until tier 3 to get to last hitting. Okay. Use private coaching, match with a coach. Interesting. That's a thing? Yeah, it takes that long to get to an AI. Oh my god. Okay. Yeah, I'm gonna have to probably do this off camera. Dota tutorial. Okay. Yeah, I guess we're just gonna dive into the tutorial and see what happens. Okay, so I have had some time to play through the first few tutorials, to get a couple matches under my belt, and get a feel for the game, and if I had to summarize my thoughts in a short manner, well, I've previously described Deadlock as an insane game for crazy people, but man, after playing through this tutorial and everything, Deadlock feels like checkers compared to Dota 2's 5D chess with multiverse time travel. Like, don't get me wrong, Deadlock is still super complicated, and many people argue it's even more complicated than MOBAs in some ways, but I really do feel like the biggest thing that Valve seems to have learned, or at least is trying to do since they designed Dota, is figuring out ways to take these complex mechanics and design them in such a way that they feel a lot more intuitive than they normally would be in other games. Like what I was saying in a prior video about the idea of complexity versus depth. Just because a mechanic is complex doesn't mean that there's a ton of strategic depth to it. And conversely, a simple mechanic can have a surprising amount of depth if it's designed well. So, like, for example, let's take the courier system in Dota. They have this mechanic where when you're away from your team spawn, which is normally where you go to buy items, you can still buy items anywhere on the map, and you'll just literally have them delivered to you in lane so that you don't have to retreat and give up pressure in your lane to progress your character. It's a cute little mechanic at first, but there's also a lot more to it. You can control your courier directly if you want. You can give it a temporary speed boost to deliver its items faster, or shield it to protect it from harm. Plus, you can pivot it to the secret shop to pick up like extra special items that you can't normally buy and bring those to you as well. And of course, in theory, you can intercept your opponent's courier and then kill it to stop them from getting their items if you manage to do it during a delivery. Like, there's a lot going on, but like, compare it to Deadlock, which effectively accomplishes the same general idea of being able to buy an item in lane without having to retreat by just kind of putting a shop in the lane. And that's kind of it. Like, both of these mechanics functionally serve the same purpose. They're both ways to allow players to buy items further in-game without having to return to spawn. But the version of this in Deadlock is just so much simpler and more intuitive than this entire courier system that they have going on in Dota. And, like, sure, I'll admit that, like, the courier in Dota does theoretically have a lot more depth to it. There's a lot you can do with piloting this thing around, and it's something to keep track of while also piloting your main character. But at the same time, based on my first impressions and what I've gathered browsing some forums and talking with a couple of people, it feels like, at least in terms of, like, casual players, like, I'm sure at the pro level it's an entirely different story, but, like, I don't feel like I'm going to be using almost any of these mechanics for most of my playtime until I get to, like, I don't know, hundreds or thousands of hours into this game. Like, something really needs to have gone wrong for the enemy to even have a chance to kill your courier. And, if that does happen, it's kind of a win more mechanic, because they had to have already been in an advantageous position, or you being way out of position and driving your courier way off course. And so if they're able to kill your courier, that they were already had the advantage, so they're just, like, getting more of an advantage. It's like, so the point I'm trying to get at is that most of the time, this is just a way to buy items without having to return to your spawn. And, like, Deadlock just accomplishes 90% of the same functionality by just having an extra shop forward in the lane, and that's it. Overall, it's just less on the mental stack of things you have to keep track of in your head. You don't have to worry about this extra delivery character that you gotta keep alive and protect so that they don't lose your items during transit. And plus, I actually really like that in Deadlock, your forward shop is tied to your guardian, so that once that first lane guard goes down, it takes your forward shop down with you. So it helps provide a direct incentive to protect that first tower for as much as you can and as long as you can. And it really forces you to fall back once it goes down, because you no longer have the ability to progress your character that far up in lane. Like, not only do you not have the tower protecting you, but now you need to go all the way back to spawn if you want to buy anything. So, like, it really helps signal to your team that, like, okay, we lost the tower, let's fall back and regroup, whereas this whole courier system, it just feels like it makes the game more complicated. But speaking of shopping in general, I have to talk about the shop menu here, because let's be honest, I think it might somehow be worse than League's item menu. Like, for all of the problems I had with League's shop, I apparently took some things for granted, because at least League had the decency to still display the item prices, Like, meanwhile in Dota, we don't even get that. This shop screen is just completely impenetrable as a new player. Like, not only are the prices not listed, but most of my problems with League still apply. The icons are way too detailed and colorful that they all just kind of blend together, and it becomes hard to figure out what any of these items are actually meant to be at a glance, and especially with how small they are, and it makes it incredibly difficult to figure out what any of these items do, since they don't have any names or descriptions or anything that you can glean from these icons. So you basically have to manually mouse over and read each item's description and price one by one. So the only way to really meaningfully learn this item system is like reading a textbook. It's just so slow and boring, and it just does not help a new player looking at this thinking like, oh, I'm going to have to memorize 400 million different items, because I just can't tell what any of these things do. And the categories that they're divided into to like sort them don't really help either. Like, okay, consumables and attributes, those make sense. Consumables is for potions and stuff, and attributes is basically just full of, standard stat sticks that just boost one of your basic stats, strength, agility, or intelligence, and that's it. But then there's like an equipment section, which is just random gear. Like, some of it is offensive, some of it is defensive, some of it are like magic abilities. Like, it's hard to really get a feel for what this category is meant to represent beyond it just being the generic flavor of just stuff you equip to your character, which, like, is that not what all of these items are? And then, of course, you have the entire category of miscellaneous, which is just profoundly unhelpful. And even more hilariously, on the second tab here, there's two categories called weapons and armaments. And, like, don't those words mean functionally the same thing? Like, why are these two different categories? Like, I don't know, maybe I'm the stupid one, but as a new player, I really don't know what these categories are trying to convey to me here. Now, to be fair, the big saving grace of this item shop system is that Dota does have in-game build sharing, just like Deadlock has, where players can create custom item build orders and share them with other players with completely in-game resources. And I mean, this alone at least almost salvages Dota's entire terrible item system, because, like, functionally the basic shop screen, it may as well not exist for me because of how unhelpful it is. Meanwhile, the custom builds actually are able to divide the items into categories that make sense, late game, early game stuff, and they can even provide commentary on each item to help explain what it does and why it's useful to you. Like, it still sucks that the shop menu has no prices or names or useful descriptive icons, but at least the build sharing is a huge positive in this regard. But yeah, in general, a lot of Deadlock's design, it really does feel like they took a lot of these mechanics from Dota, or really just MOBAs in general, and they simplified them, but they did so in really intelligent ways that minimize the amount of depth that they lost, so that it's still, like, nuanced and complicated mechanics in terms of strategy, but they're a lot more intuitive for a new player to kind of approach for the first time. Like, another good example of this is to compare last hitting, which is far from a unique mechanic to Dota. Most MOBAs have this, but I am almost universally not a fan of how it plays out in these MOBAs. It's awkward to do, and if you mess it up, it really ruins your income for potentially the entire game. Not to mention, having to balance out the extra rewards between you and a teammate can easily lead to toxicity, and the way auto-attacking works just kind of makes it feel harder than it should be to get the timing right. Plus, every character has different timing and ranges, so that just makes it that much harder to learn a new character. Like, it's a relatively minor mechanic in the grand scheme of things, but it really does disproportionately turn away a lot of new players, I think. Meanwhile, in Deadlock, instead of having to get the last hit on a minion to get an extra reward, all minions, regardless of how they die, always drop a soul orb that you can shoot to get extra souls. It serves a lot of the same purposes of last hitting, because, like, not getting those soul orbs is going to dramatically affect your soul income. And of course, enemies can deny your soul orbs by shooting them first to steal those souls from you, which is the real thing that you're trying to prevent. So, like, it still has depth and it serves a lot of the same purposes of last hitting, but it's presented in a much more clear and understandable way. Because, like, in Dota, or most MOBAs for that matter, again, if nobody told you that last hitting existed, it's not really visually clear that it's even a mechanic until after you successfully perform a last hit and see the extra gold go into your wallet. But even then, it's not necessarily obvious that that's what's happening. You might easily think that it's just like a random effect that occasionally happens from killing a minion. Meanwhile, in Deadlock, you can't really miss these big, giant, glowing orbs that keep flying out of creeps, even if you don't directly interact with the mechanic. And you'll definitely notice when an enemy steals one of your soul orbs, because it plays this loud and annoying sound effect to make you hate when it happens. And then, of course, it gives you the numbers that pops up to show that they got souls for killing your soul orb. So even without having to watch a tutorial for how the mechanic works, it's a lot easier to discern what's going on, just even as a new player who's never seen this mechanic before. And of course the shooter mechanics, I feel, make trying to claim these orbs a lot more intuitive. Like, sure, you have to now aim in 3D space in order to try and hit them, and every character works differently. And you would think that that would impose the same problems as the auto-attacking system in other MOBAs, but I feel like people have a lot more experience with getting used to how different guns work, simply because shooters are that much more popular of a genre than, how these auto-attacks work in this RTS format. And I mean, to be fair, that's probably why they made Deadlock a shooter in the first place. The entire MOBA genre, for the most part, is based almost entirely on the RTS or real-time strategy genre. I mean, MOBAs were literally created as a mod for StarCraft and Warcraft, but the RTS genre has mostly fallen by the wayside in terms of popularity these days. You know, you don't really see too many major RTS games coming out anymore, especially at high-profile events. And so MOBAs have kind of outlived their predecessors, but that also means that nobody getting into the MOBA genre today is going to have those RTS skills built up from playing those older strategy games, and so they don't have the skills to translate into this format of an interface anymore. But by making Deadlock have the interface of a shooter, well, shooters are easily by far the most popular genre just in existence, and that's probably not going to go away anytime soon. So there will always be people who have grown up getting used to the interface of a shooter, and thus will be able to translate those skills into the mechanics of Deadlock. You know, even putting aside all of the other complex mechanics in these games, that fact alone will probably make Deadlock appeal to so many more players than, you know, League or Dota ever could. But yeah, overall, my first impressions of Dota as a new player is that the game feels incredibly unfriendly to new players. You know, not unlike most of the other MOBAs I've tried out in the past, which, you know, again, is, like I said at the start, this is not to say that Dota is necessarily a bad game. I do think that there are a lot of aspects that do feel at least a little better to play than League. And as I mentioned, some mechanics like the in-game build sharing do help quite a bit compared to other MOBAs, but I'm not terribly surprised that, like League, Dota also has garnered a reputation of struggling to get new players on board these days. And as I've said before, I do think that that is the exact problem that they want to avoid with how they're designing Deadlock. They obviously still want to make a big, complicated game, but they're trying to root it in more familiar systems and mechanics. The shooter gameplay, the more well-organized and informative shop screen, the platforming mechanics, the zip lines, and how the lanes are structured. Everything is being designed to be as intuitive and straightforward as possible, while still maintaining a lot of interesting strategic depth to give the game more appeal to those hardcore professional players. And I mean, they kind of have to do that to some degree, right? You know, Deadlock doesn't have 15 plus years of loyal fans to fall back on. They have to appeal to new players to even have a chance of existing when they eventually hit 1.0. But I do think that even as Deadlock matures over the coming years, it will probably continue to appeal to new players a lot more than most other MOBAs have managed in their tenure. But as always, I'm happy to continue the conversation in the comments down below. I can't say I am terribly surprised that I bounced off Dota, but, you know, I do think it, like I said, it does at least a couple of things better than League, but, you know, these kinds of RTS MOBAs just do not feel designed to appeal to anyone that hasn't already been playing them for over a decade. But by all means, let me know about your experiences with Dota or any other MOBA for that matter in the comments. And if you like this video, make sure to leave me a like and hit that subscribe button if you want to see more content like this in the future. And if you want to support the channel more directly, there's a link to my Ko-Fi in the description down below. Thank you all for watching, and I hope to see you all in the next one.